The massive space station called Harmony's Edge floated in the darkness between stars. Ships from dozens of different worlds docked at its metal arms. Inside the main conference hall, beings from across the galaxy gathered around a circular table made of polished stone. Nari Kim sat quietly in her chair. She looked small next to the towering aliens around her. Her black hair was tied back in a simple ponytail. Her dark eyes watched everything. To most of the creatures in the room, she appeared to be nothing more than a child. The Vorthak delegation sat across from the humans. Their leader was Veltar, a massive being with gray skin and forearms. His species lived for over 300 years. To him, humans were babies who had just learned to walk among the stars. Ambassador Hee-Jin Lee spoke for Earth. She was an older woman with silver hair and kind eyes. "We want peace between our peoples," she said. "War helps no one." Veltar's voice was deep and rough. "Your species is weak. You have only been in space for 200 years. We have ruled the stars for thousands," Nari's aide Teho Park whispered to her. He was her childhood friend and trusted companion. "He doesn't even look at you," he said quietly. Nari nodded slightly. She had noticed. None of the Vorthak paid attention to her. They saw her uniform and assumed she was just a secretary or student. This was exactly what she wanted. General Wook Choi sat beside Ambassador Lee. He was a veteran soldier with scars on his hands from old battles. "We may be young," he said, "but we learn quickly." The alien beings around the table made sounds that might have been laughter. A creature with blue skin and 6 legs spoke up. "Humans think they are special. Every young race believes this." Nari stayed silent. She watched how each alien moved. She studied their body language. She listened to how they spoke. Her mind was always working, always analyzing. The negotiations went badly. The Vorthak wanted human colonies. They wanted tribute payments. They wanted humans to stay in their small corner of space and never expand further. "This is not negotiation," said Ambassador Lee. "This is surrender." Veltar stood up. His forearms spread wide. "Then you choose war? Your ships are toys. Your weapons are sticks and stones. We will crush you in days," Nari finally spoke. Her voice was calm and soft. "How many ships do you have in this sector?" The room fell silent. All eyes turned to her. Veltar looked confused. "What did you say, child?" "I asked about your fleet strength," Nari repeated. She did not seem afraid or nervous. "It's a simple military question." Veltar's eyes narrowed. "Why does a secretary ask military questions?" General Choi smiled slightly. "She is Commander Nari Kim of the Human Defense Fleet. She is our youngest fleet commander in history." Several aliens made surprised sounds. The blue creature with 6 legs tilted its head. "A child commands your ships?" "I graduated from the military academy at age 16, Nari said simply. "I have been studying warfare for 12 years, Veltar snorted. 12 years is nothing. I have fought battles for longer than your species has had writing." Nari nodded politely. "Experience is valuable, but sometimes fresh eyes see what old ones miss." The Vorthak prince became angry. His gray skin turned darker. "You mock me, human child." "Not at all," Nari said. "I respect your achievements. I hope you will give me the same courtesy." The tension in the room grew thick. Other alien delegates watched the exchange with interest. Some seemed amused by the young human challenging the mighty Vorthak. Ambassador Lee tried to calm things down. "Perhaps we should take a break." But Veltar was not finished. "You want to see Vorthak power?" He pressed a button on his wrist device. "My fleet is already moving. We will take your colonies whether you agree or not." Alarms suddenly began ringing throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red. A voice over the speakers announced, "All ships prepare for immediate departure. Unknown vessels approaching at high speed." Nari stood up calmly while everyone else panicked. She walked to the large window that showed space outside. In the distance, dark shapes were moving against the stars. Teho joined her at the window. "Vorthak attack ships," he said quietly. Nari pulled out a small device and began typing rapidly. Her fingers moved across the screen like a pianist playing a difficult song. "Station defense grid status?" She asked into the device. A voice replied, "Minimal defenses. 3 patrol ships and emergency barriers only." The other delegates were shouting and arguing. Some ran toward the exits. Others demanded explanations from Veltar. "This was planned," General Choi said to Ambassador Lee. "They came here to attack, not to negotiate." Nari continued working on her device. She was accessing the station's systems, studying its layout and capabilities. "Teho, how many civilian ships are docked here?" "About 40, he replied. "Mostly cargo vessels and passenger liners. Any with military-grade engines?" Teho checked his own device. 3 freight haulers with enhanced drive systems, and 1 deep space explorer with advanced sensors. Nari's eyes lit up. Perfect. Veltar was watching her now. Something about her calm behavior puzzled him. While everyone else showed fear, she seemed almost pleased. The station shook as the first enemy weapons hit the outer shields. Emergency announcements filled the air. All personnel to emergency stations. Prepare for evacuation procedures. Nari walked to the conference table's communication panel. She pressed several buttons with confident movements. Her voice went out over the entire station. "This is Commander Kim of the Human Defense Fleet. All ship captains report to emergency frequency 7. We are organizing immediate tactical withdrawal. Civilian vessels will be escorted to safety." Within minutes, her device was filled with responses from ship captains. Most were confused but willing to follow orders. Nari began giving each captain specific instructions. "Captain Park, take your cargo ship to grid reference 4. Use your enhanced engines to create a sensor shadow for the passenger liners behind you. Captain Song, your Explorer's sensors are our eyes now. Move to high orbit and report enemy positions every 30 seconds. Teho watched in amazement as Nari turned chaos into order. She was using civilian ships like pieces on a chessboard. The station shook again, harder this time. Through the window, they could see Vorthak ships getting closer. Veltar stared at Nari with new attention. This was not the frightened child he had expected to see. This young human was doing something he had never seen before. She was turning a hopeless situation into an organized retreat. Impossible, he whispered to himself. But Nari was just getting started. 3 weeks had passed since the attack on Harmony's Edge. Nari Kim stood on the bridge of the HSS Silent Runner, watching the swirling colors of the Kepler Nebula through the main screen. The nebula was beautiful but dangerous. Its gas clouds could hide 1,000 ships or destroy them with electrical storms. Captain Dong Wuxin stood beside her. He was a tall man with gray hair and deep lines around his eyes. He had been fighting in space for 20 years. When he first met Nari, he thought Command had made a mistake sending him a child. "Commander," he said quietly, "my sensors show nothing but gas and dust. Are you sure they're in there?" Nari nodded without taking her eyes off the screen. The Vorthak think like hunters. They choose places where prey cannot escape. The nebula has only 3 exits. It's perfect for staging an invasion. Behind them, Lieutenant Sujin Yang worked at the communication station. She was young like Nari, but her fingers moved across controls with expert skill. "Still picking up scattered signals," she reported. "Something big is definitely hiding in those clouds." Chief Engineer Byung-ho Lim climbed up from the lower deck. His hands were covered in grease and his uniform was stained from working on the engines. "The stealth modifications are ready, Commander. We can go through their sensors, but only for a few hours before the systems overheat." Nari turned to face her crew. The bridge was small and cramped, filled with the soft blue glow of instrument panels. "We have one chance to get close enough to see their real strength. Everyone needs to trust the plan." Captain Shin crossed his arms. "With respect, Commander, this is suicide. If they detect us inside that nebula, we'll be trapped with nowhere to run." "That's exactly why they won't expect us," Nari replied. "The Vorthak see humans as cowards. They think we only fight when we have advantages. Going into their stronghold shows either bravery or stupidity." "And which is this?" asked Lieutenant Yang with a small smile. Nari grinned back. "Both." The silent runner moved slowly toward the nebula's edge. 2 other ships followed them. The HSS Quick Strike was a fast scout vessel commanded by Captain Moon Ho Lee. The HSS Deep Eye was a sensor ship with advanced scanning equipment. As they entered the nebula's outer layers, the main screen filled with swirling purple and gold gases. Electrical discharges flashed like lightning in the distance. The ship's hull groaned softly as gravitational forces pulled at it. "Activating stealth systems," announced Engineer Lim. "We are now invisible to most sensors, but our own scanning range is reduced." Nari walked to the tactical station. She studied the readouts carefully. "The electromagnetic interference will hide us, but it also blinds us. We need to get closer than anyone would think possible." Captain Shin shook his head. "This goes against everything I learned in 40 years of military service." "That's why it might work," Nari said. "The Vorthak have been fighting for centuries. They know all the old tricks. But humans think differently. The 3 human ships moved deeper into the nebula like shadows. The gas clouds grew thicker and the electrical storms more frequent. Sometimes the ships had to change course to avoid dangerous energy pockets. Hours passed in tense silence. The crew worked quietly at their stations, watching instruments and adjusting systems. Everyone knew that discovery meant certain death. Lieutenant Yang suddenly straightened at her post. "Commander, I'm picking up engine signatures." Multiple contacts, very large. Nari hurried to her station. "How many?" Difficult to tell through the interference, but at least 50 ships. Maybe more. Captain Shin's face went pale. 50 ships? That's 3 times larger than our entire home fleet. Nari studied the sensor data. The readings were fuzzy because of the nebula, but patterns were emerging. "Look at the formation. They're not just hiding, they're organized for invasion." She called up a tactical display on the main screen. Red dots appeared showing estimated enemy positions. The pattern looked like a spear pointed directly at human space. "Captain Moonho, this is Nari. Move your ship to Grid 7 Alpha. I need better scanning of their left flank." The voice of Captain Lee came through the communication system. "Moving now, Commander. This nebula is playing games with my instruments, but I'm getting some interesting readings." Engineer Lim monitored the stealth systems. "Power levels holding steady, but we're pushing the equipment hard. If we stay much longer, something will break down." Nari made quick calculations in her head. 15 more minutes. That should give us enough data. As they moved closer to the enemy fleet, more details became clear. The Vortex ships were enormous, built for war rather than speed. Each vessel could probably destroy a human ship with single shots. But Nari noticed something interesting. The enemy formation had a weakness. They were positioned to defend against attacks from human space, but their rear and sides were less protected. "They're so confident," she whispered to herself. "They think we'll never find them here." Captain Shin overheard her. "What are you thinking, Commander?" "They've made the same mistake everyone makes with humans. They assume we'll do what's expected." Lieutenant Yang's instrument suddenly beeped with alarm. "Commander, one of their patrol ships is moving this way. I think they detected something." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of engines and electronic systems. Everyone watched the tactical display as a red dot moved toward their position. "Maintain course and speed," Nari ordered calmly. "Don't change anything that might create a sensor signature." The Vorthak patrol ship passed within a few thousand kilometers of the silent runner. Its sensors swept the area like searchlights looking for intruders. For several long minutes, the human crew held their breath. Finally, the enemy ship moved away. It had found nothing but gas clouds and electrical interference. "That was too close," muttered Engineer Lim. Nari smiled. "That was perfect. Now we know their patrol patterns." She spent the next few minutes taking detailed scans of the enemy fleet. Her tactical mind was already working on plans. She could see weaknesses in their formation, gaps in their defenses. "Time to leave," she announced. "We have what we came for." The 3 human ships began their careful withdrawal from the nebula. They moved like ghosts, invisible and silent. Behind them, the massive Vorthak invasion fleet continued preparing for war, never knowing they had been watched. As they reached safe distance, Captain Shin turned to Nari. His expression had changed from doubt to respect. "Commander, what you just did was either brilliant or insane." "The best plans are usually both," Nari replied. "Now we need to get this information back to Earth. The real war is about to begin." In the depths of the nebula, Veltar stood on his command ship. Reports were coming in about sensor ghosts and equipment malfunctions. His officers dismissed these as normal problems caused by the nebula's interference, but something bothered him. His warrior instincts told him they were being watched. However, the idea that humans would dare enter Vorthak's stronghold seemed impossible. After all, they were just children playing at being soldiers, or so he still believed. The Luna Defense Station orbited Earth's moon like a silver star against the black of space. Inside its main conference room, the most powerful military leaders of humanity gathered around a holographic display showing the galaxy. The room was filled with tension and worried voices. Nari Kim stood at the center, her small frame dwarfed by the massive table and the serious faces around it. She had just finished presenting her intelligence about the Vorthak invasion fleet. The reaction was not what she had hoped for. Admiral Changmin Park leaned back in his chair. He was Taeho's father, a man with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. Commander Kim, you're asking us to believe that a force of 50 enemy warships is hidden in the Kepler Nebula. That's correct, sir, Nari replied calmly. And you gathered this information by taking 3 ships into the most dangerous region of space, without authorization from this council. Nari's friend Taiho shifted uncomfortably beside her. He knew his father respected courage but also valued following proper military procedures. General Wook Choi, who had supported Nari since the peace talks, spoke up. The intelligence appears solid, Admiral. Our other scouts have detected increased Vorthak activity in nearby sectors. Colonel Ji-hoon Yoon was a large man with scars across his neck from an old battle. He commanded the Marine forces and had little patience for complicated strategies. Even if this intelligence is accurate, what can we do? 50 ships against our entire fleet of 20 vessels. The mathematics are simple. Nari touched a control on the table. The holographic display changed, showing human space and the predicted Vorthak invasion routes. The numbers don't tell the whole story, Colonel. The enemy has advantages in ship strength and firepower, but they also have weaknesses, such as, asked Admiral Park, his voice skeptical. They think like conquerors, Nari explained. They expect us to defend our colonies directly. They expect us to fight like every other species they've defeated. Dr. Yoon-soo Kim entered the conference room carrying a data pad filled with research notes. She was Nari's older sister, a xenobiology expert who studied alien species for the Defense Ministry. Her long black hair was pulled back and her eyes showed the tiredness of someone who had been working without sleep. Sorry I'm late, Dr. Kim said. I've been analyzing Vorthak psychology and battle history. She connected her data pad to the main display. Images of Vorthak warriors and their previous conquests appeared in the air above the table. The Vorthak have conquered 17 different species over the past 1,000 years, she explained. In every case, they use the same basic strategy. Overwhelming force applied to the enemy's strongest defensive positions. Colonel Yoon crossed his arms. That's exactly what they'll do to us. Only if we fight the way they expect, Nari said. But what if we don't? She manipulated the holographic display, showing human colonies and defense positions. Every species they've defeated tried to protect their homeworlds and major colonies. They gathered their fleets into defensive formations and waited for the attack. Admiral Park studied the display carefully. And you're suggesting we do something different? Nari nodded. I'm suggesting we let them think they're winning. The room fell silent. Several officers exchanged confused glances. The idea of deliberately losing battles went against everything they had learned about warfare. Taeho spoke quietly. Nari, can you explain what you mean? Nari walked around the table, her hands moving as she talked. The Vorthak respect strength, but only after they recognize it. Right now, they see us as weak children. We can use that blindness against them. She touched the controls again. The display showed human colonies with evacuation routes marked in blue lines. We evacuate civilian populations from border worlds. We leave behind automated defenses that will fight and eventually fail. The Vorthak will think they're crushing desperate resistance. You want us to abandon our colonies? Colonel Yoon's voice rose with anger. Temporarily, Nari said. While they're celebrating easy victories and spreading their forces across captured territory, we reposition our fleets behind them. Dr. Kim added her research to the display. Vorthak psychology supports this strategy. They become overconfident when facing weak opponents. They extend their supply lines too far and leave their rear areas poorly defended. Admiral Park stood up and walked closer to the holographic map. This is the most unconventional battle plan I've ever seen. You're asking us to let the enemy take our worlds. Empty worlds, Nari corrected. With our people safe and our real fleet hidden until the perfect moment to strike. General Choi leaned forward. What kind of moment are you talking about, Commander? Nari smiled slightly. The moment when they realize they've been fighting ghosts while the real human fleet surrounds them. The discussion continued for hours. Officers raised concerns about logistics, civilian evacuation, and the political cost of appearing to surrender territory. Nari answered each question with detailed explanations and backup plans. Commander Soo-young-oh spoke from the back of the room. She led deep space patrol units and knew the outer colonies well. The evacuation alone would take weeks. How do we keep the Vorthak from detecting such massive population movements? Nari had anticipated this question. We used the same techniques that hid our scout ships in the nebula. False sensor signatures, electromagnetic interference, and misdirection. She brought up new displays showing evacuation schedules and deception plans. Civilian ships will appear to be normal commercial traffic. Our military vessels will seem to be conducting routine patrol missions. Sergeant Kyung-ho Bayek was a special operations expert who rarely spoke in meetings. His voice was quiet but intense. This plan requires perfect timing and coordination. One mistake could result in civilian casualties or military disaster. Every war plan has risks, Nari replied. But this one uses human advantages instead of fighting against human weaknesses. Navigator In-ho Song, who coordinated fleet movements, studied the proposed ship positions. Commander, you're asking our captains to ignore every instinct they have about protecting home territory. I'm asking them to trust that sometimes retreat is the first step toward victory, Nari answered. Admiral Park returned to his chair and sat quietly for several minutes. Everyone in the room waited for his decision. As the senior military commander, his approval was necessary for such a radical strategy. Finally, he spoke. Commander Kim, your plan goes against centuries of military tradition. It requires us to appear weak when every instinct says we should show strength. Nari waited, her expression calm but her heart racing. However, the admiral continued, traditional strategies against this enemy will certainly result in our defeat. At least your approach offers hope of victory. He stood up and looked around the room at the other officers. We will implement Commander Kim's strategy. All evacuation and repositioning orders are authorized. As the meeting ended and officers began filing out, Dr. Kim approached her sister. Nari, I hope you're right about this. You're betting the survival of our entire species on one plan. Nari watched through the conference room's large windows as Earth turned slowly in the distance. Every great victory requires great risks, sister. The Vorthak are about to learn that humans don't fight wars the way they expect. In the depths of space, Veltar's invasion fleet began moving toward human territory. He expected easy conquest and quick victory. He had no idea that his young opponent was about to turn warfare itself into a weapon. The first human colony to fall was New Sol on the planet Harmony Prime. From his command ship, Veltar watched the attack through his tactical displays. The human defenses seemed pathetically weak. Their ships fled after only brief resistance. Their ground installations surrendered within hours. This is easier than I expected, Veltar said to his second-in-command, a fierce warrior named Kethvor. These humans fight like frightened children. Kethvor nodded, his forearms adjusting controls on his station. Our intelligence reports were accurate. They have no stomach for real war. But 300 million kilometers away, Nari Kim stood in the command center of Luna Station, watching the same battle. Her expression was calm, almost pleased. What Veltar saw as weakness was actually perfect execution of her plan. Captain Moon-Soo Ryu reported from his hidden position near the asteroid belt. Colony evacuation complete, Commander. All civilians are safely away. The automated defenses are performing exactly as programmed. Nari smiled slightly. Good. Let him think he's crushing desperate defenders. The human ships that fled from Veltar's attack were actually old cargo vessels filled with sensor equipment. They broadcast false distress signals and energy signatures that made them appear to be military cruisers. The real human fleet was nowhere near the battle. Over the following weeks, the pattern repeated across human space. Colony after colony seemed to fall to Vorthak forces. Each victory made Veltar more confident, and his forces more spread out across the captured territory. Major Yuna Choi worked in the Tactical Analysis Center deep inside Luna Station. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and quick hands that never stopped moving across her computer controls. Charts and data streams covered every screen around her workspace. Commander, she called to Nari. The Vorthak fleet is now spread across 12 different star systems. Their supply lines stretch over 40 light years. Nari studied the tactical display showing enemy positions. Perfect. They're doing exactly what we hoped. How are our hidden fleets positioned? Teho answered from his communication station. Alpha Fleet is concealed in the Shadow Nebula. Beta Fleet is hiding behind the gas giant in the Ross system. Gamma Fleet is stationed near the abandoned mining platforms at Kepler Station. Each human fleet was small, only 5 or 6 ships, but they were positioned at critical points behind the advancing Vorthak forces. Nari had spent weeks calculating exactly where to place them for maximum effect. Commander Su Young contacted them from her deep space position. Her patrol ships had been watching Vorthak movements and reporting back through hidden communication relays. Nari, The enemy supply convoys are using the exact routes your models predicted. They're completely undefended. They think all human forces are in front of them. Nari walked to the main tactical display. The holographic map showed the entire war zone with red markers for Vorthak forces and blue markers for hidden human fleets. It looked like a spider web with the enemy trapped in the center. "Begin Phase 2, she ordered quietly. Across human space, hidden fleets began moving. They stayed in sensor shadows and used asteroid fields to mask their approach. The Vorthak had no idea that human ships were closing in behind them. The first supply convoy to disappear was carrying weapons and fuel to Veltar's forward bases. It simply vanished between star systems. When rescue ships arrived, they found only empty space and debris fields. Veltar received the report while celebrating another easy victory over human defenders. "What do you mean the convoy is gone?" he demanded. His intelligence officer, a nervous creature with blue skin, checked his instruments repeatedly. The ships were there, then they were not. Perhaps equipment failure or navigation error. "Entire convoys don't vanish because of navigation errors," Veltar growled. But he had bigger concerns. The humans were still retreating, still losing colonies. His forces were advancing faster than expected. The war would be over within days. 2 more supply convoys disappeared over the next week. Then a small Vorthak outpost went silent. When patrol ships investigated, they found the base destroyed and abandoned. Sergeant Kyung-ho Baek led the special operations team responsible for that raid. His soldiers moved like shadows, striking quickly and disappearing before enemy reinforcements could arrive. They left no evidence of who had attacked. "Ghost raid successful," he reported to Nari. "Enemy rear areas are becoming nervous. They're starting to request additional security for supply lines." Nari nodded with satisfaction. Fear is spreading faster than their fleets. Soon they'll realize something is wrong. Veltar was beginning to have the same realization. Standing in his command center, he studied reports of missing ships and destroyed outposts. The pattern made no sense if humans were truly defeated and retreating. "These supply line attacks," he said to Kethvor, "they're too precise, too well coordinated for desperate survivors." Kethvor's expression showed doubt for the first time. "You think the humans are more organized than we believed?" "I think we may have been seeing what they wanted us to see," Veltar replied grimly. He ordered his intelligence teams to analyze all human military communications they had intercepted. What they found worried him. The human commanders sounded too calm, too confident for a species facing extinction. Navigator In-Ho Song was coordinating the final movements of human fleets. His job was to position them for the decisive battle that would end the war. Everything had to be perfectly timed. "Commander Kim," he reported, "all units are in position. The Vorthak main fleet is exactly where you predicted they would be." Nari looked at the tactical display one final time. The trap was complete. Veltar's forces were spread thin across human space, far from each other and far from home. Their supply lines were cut. Hidden human fleets surrounded them on all sides. "Send the signal to all units," she ordered. "Operation Mirror Strike begins now." Across the war zone, human ships that had been hiding for weeks suddenly appeared on Vorthak sensors. They struck simultaneously at supply bases, communication centers, and isolated enemy squadrons. The Vorthak forces that had seemed so victorious suddenly found themselves trapped and surrounded. Cut off from supplies and reinforcements, they faced an impossible situation. Veltar stood in his command center watching his tactical displays fill with new contacts. Human ships appeared everywhere, attacking from directions that should have been impossible. "How many human fleets are there?" he demanded. "At least 6 different groups, sir," his panicked intelligence officer replied. "Maybe more. They're coming from all around us." For the first time in his long military career, Veltar felt the cold touch of real fear. The humans had not been retreating in defeat. They had been leading him into the most sophisticated trap he had ever seen. And at the center of it all was the young human commander he had dismissed as a child. The battle for the Jupiter system raged among the moons and asteroid rings. Veltar's command ship, the mighty destroyer of worlds, faced off against the human fleet in a desperate fight for survival. His forces were trapped, surrounded, and running out of supplies. Veltar stood on his bridge watching the tactical displays with growing amazement. The human ships moved like dancers, each vessel perfectly coordinated with the others. Their attacks came from unexpected angles and retreated before his heavy weapons could respond. "Who is commanding their fleet?" he demanded from his intelligence chief. Kethvor checked his instruments with shaking hands. The tactical patterns suggest a single commanding mind, but our communications intercepts mention multiple human commanders. Show me everything we know about their military leadership, Veltar ordered. The main screen filled with images and data about human officers. Admiral Park, General Choi, Colonel Yoon, and dozens of others appeared in holographic displays. But one name kept appearing in connection with the most brilliant tactical maneuvers. Nari Kim, Kethvor read from his reports. Human female, age 22 standard years. Graduated from their military academy at 16. Current rank is fleet commander. Veltar stared at the image on his screen. It showed a small human with dark hair and serious eyes. She looked impossibly young, barely more than a child by any civilized species standards. This cannot be correct, he said slowly. You're telling me that the tactical genius who has been outmaneuvering our entire invasion fleet is the same human female from the peace conference? The communication patterns and tactical signatures match. Sir, Kethvor replied nervously. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the HSS Thunderstrike, Nari Kim coordinated the complex battle with calm precision. Multiple screens around her showed the positions of every ship in both fleets. Her fingers moved quickly across control panels, sending orders to individual captains. Captain Ryu, take your squadron through the asteroid field and hit their left flank, she ordered. Captain O used Jupiter's gravity well to slingshot around and attack their supply ships. Teho monitored communications from his station beside her. Nari, the Vorthak are starting to coordinate their responses better. They're adapting to our tactics. Nari nodded. Good. That means their commander is finally taking us seriously. The space battle continued for hours. Human ships darted between the massive Vorthak vessels like small fish around whales, but the small fish had sharp teeth and perfect coordination. Captain Moonsu Ryu led his squadron in a daring attack run through an asteroid field. His ships used the floating rocks as cover, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. Direct hit on their ammunition depot, he reported. Secondary explosions spreading through their formation. Commander Su Young-oh brought her patrol ships around Jupiter's massive bulk, using the planet's gravity to increase their speed. Her surprise attack crippled 2 Vorthak cruisers before they could raise their shields. Major Yoon Choi coordinated targeting data from her analysis center. Commander, I'm detecting critical damage to their flagship's engines. Their mobility is severely reduced. Nari saw the opportunity immediately. All units focus fire on the Destroyer of Worlds. If we can disable their command ship, the rest of their fleet will lose coordination. The human fleet converged on Veltar's massive vessel. Dozens of ships attacked simultaneously, their combined firepower overwhelming even the strongest shields. On the Vorthak flagship, damage reports flooded in from every section. Fires burned in the lower decks. Life support systems struggled to maintain atmosphere. The great ship that had conquered 17 worlds was dying. A damaged Vorthak escort ship broadcast an emergency message. This is Captain Zektar to any vessel. We have casualties and our medical bay is destroyed. Request immediate assistance. The human fleet could have ignored the plea or destroyed the helpless ship. Instead, Nari made a decision that surprised everyone, including her own officers. Medical ship Mercy respond to their distress call. She ordered, render aid to the wounded regardless of species. Teho looked at her with concern. Nari, they're still our enemies. They're also living beings who need help, she replied firmly. We fight with honor or we don't fight at all. The human medical vessel approached the damaged Vorthak ship cautiously. Soon, human doctors and nurses were treating wounded alien warriors who had been trying to kill them minutes before. This act of unexpected compassion was broadcast across all communication channels. Every ship in both fleets witnessed the moment when humanity showed its true character. On the Vorthak flagship, Veltar watched this display of mercy with amazement. In all his centuries of warfare, he had never seen victorious enemies help the defeated. It went against everything he thought he knew about the nature of conquest. Sir, his communication officer called out, the human flagship is sending a direct message to you. Put it on the main screen, Veltar ordered. The screen flickered and Nari Kim appeared before him. She sat in her command chair, looking small and young, but speaking with the authority of someone who had just won an impossible victory. This is Commander Nari Kim of the Human Defense Fleet, she said calmly. I am offering you and your remaining forces safe passage back to your own territory. Your wounded will receive medical care. Your dead will be treated with respect. Veltar stared at the screen in silence. This was the moment he had been both dreading and anticipating, face to face with the tactical genius who had defeated him. Behind Nari, he could see her bridge crew working efficiently at their stations. They looked so young, these humans, so small and fragile compared to mighty Vorthak warriors, yet they had outfought and outthought his entire invasion force. "You are truly Nari Kim?" he asked slowly. "I am," she replied simply. Veltar stood up from his command chair. His officers watched in amazement as their proud leader performed an action none of them had ever seen before. He placed his four hands together in a gesture of respect and spoke a single name with careful pronunciation. "Commander Nari Kim," he said, his voice carrying the weight of recognition and honor. The simple act of speaking her name correctly, with full acknowledgement of her rank and achievements, sent shockwaves through both fleets. Here was the mighty Veltar, conqueror of worlds, showing respect to a young human female he had once dismissed as a child. "I accept your offer of safe passage," he continued. "But first I must know, how did you defeat us so completely?" "We outnumbered your forces 3-1. Nari considered her answer carefully. "You saw what you expected to see. You fought the war you knew how to fight. But humans don't always do what's expected." Veltar nodded slowly, beginning to understand. "You used our assumptions against us. Your biggest mistake was thinking that young meant weak and different meant inferior," Nari replied. "Humans have learned that survival often depends on doing what others think is impossible." For several long minutes, the two commanders looked at each other across the communication link. Warrior respected warrior, regardless of species or age or gender. Finally, Veltar spoke again. "Commander Nari Kim, you have taught me something important today. I will ensure that my people remember this lesson." As the Vorthak fleet limped away from human space, carrying their wounded and their new understanding of human capabilities, Veltar stood alone on his bridge thinking about the young female who had changed his entire view of warfare. He would never again make the mistake of underestimating any opponent based on their appearance. And he would never forget the name of the human who had shown him that true strength comes in many forms. Nari Kim had become a name that would be spoken with respect throughout the Vorthak Empire. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Jupiter. The war was officially over, but its effects rippled across the galaxy like waves from a stone dropped in still water. The story of how a young human commander had defeated the mighty Vorthak Empire spread from world to world. Nari Kim stood in her new office at Fleet Command Headquarters on Luna. Through the large windows, she could see Earth hanging in space like a blue jewel. Ships from many different species now visited human space regularly, bringing trade offers and requests for military cooperation. Her sister, Dr. Yoon-Soo Kim, entered carrying a datapad filled with reports. "The Galactic Council wants to meet with you next month," she said. "They're calling it a formal recognition ceremony." Nari smiled slightly. 6 months ago they barely acknowledged that humans existed. Now they want to give us awards. "That's what happens when you prove that a young species can outsmart older ones," Yoon-Soo replied. "The whole galaxy is reassessing their assumptions about maturity and wisdom." Taeho Park knocked on the doorframe before entering. He now wore the insignia of a full commander, promoted for his service during the war. "Nari, you have a visitor. Someone you'll want to see." He stepped aside and Veltar entered the office. The massive Vorthak had to bend slightly to fit through the doorway designed for humans. He wore simple traveling clothes instead of military armor, but his presence still filled the room. "Commander Kim," he said formally, performing the respectful hand gesture he had learned during their last meeting. "Prince Veltar," Nari replied, standing and bowing slightly in the human fashion. "This is an unexpected honor." Veltar looked around the office, taking note of the military awards on the walls and the tactical displays showing current fleet positions. "I have come to make a proposal that my government will probably consider madness." "I'm listening," Nari said, gesturing for him to sit in a specially reinforced chair designed for larger alien species. "The Vorthak Empire faces a new threat," Veltar explained. "The Kree Consortium has been expanding aggressively toward our borders. They are a machine intelligence, collective minds that see all biological life as inefficient and expendable." Dr. Kim looked up from her datapad with interest. "I've heard reports about the Kree. They convert entire worlds into factories and processing centers." Veltar nodded grimly. They have already consumed 12 star systems. Their fleets grow stronger with each victory because they turn conquered resources immediately into new ships and weapons. Nari studied the alien prince carefully. And you want human help to fight them? More than that, Veltar said. I want to learn from you. Your methods of warfare are unlike anything we have encountered. You think in ways that even the Kree might not anticipate. Teho raised an eyebrow. You're asking the species you tried to conquer 6 months ago to teach you military strategy. I am asking the species that defeated me to help save both our peoples, Veltar replied. The Kree will not negotiate. They will not show mercy. They will simply consume everything in their path until nothing biological remains. Nari walked to the window and looked out at the peaceful scene of ships moving between Earth and Luna. What exactly are you proposing? A joint military academy, Veltar said. Vorthak officers learning human tactics. Human officers learning Vorthak technology and ship design. Together, we might develop strategies that neither species could create alone. Elder Thekmar appeared on the communication screen built into Nari's desk. The ancient Vorthak leader looked tired but determined. Commander Kim, I personally approve this proposal. Prince Veltar has convinced our war council that human military thinking offers advantages our traditional methods lack. Nari considered the request carefully. Working with former enemies was always dangerous, but the threat of the Kree Consortium was real and growing. I'll need approval from our government and military leadership, she said finally, but I think this could benefit both species. General Haewon Kim entered the office at that moment. She was Nari's mentor, and the woman who had first recognized the young girl's tactical genius years earlier. Her gray hair was pulled back severely, and her uniform showed the decorations of a lifetime of service. I've been listening from the outer office, she said. The proposal has merit. The Kree represent a threat to all biological life in this sector of the galaxy. Ambassador Junho Lee joined the meeting via communication link from the diplomatic corps. The political implications are significant, he noted. An alliance with the Vorthak would change humanity's position in galactic politics permanently. Over the following hours, they discussed details of the proposed cooperation. Veltar shared intelligence about Kree capabilities and tactics. Nari explained human approaches to asymmetric warfare and adaptive strategy. The most important lesson you taught me, Veltar told Nari, is that apparent weakness can be transformed into actual strength. The Kree see biological life as inherently inferior to machine intelligence. That assumption could become their vulnerability. Nari nodded thoughtfully. The same way your assumption about human weakness became yours. Exactly, Veltar agreed. You showed me that victory comes not from superior force but from superior understanding of the battlefield and the enemy's expectations. Dr. Kim had been studying Kree psychology and behavior patterns. The machines think in pure logic and efficiency, she reported. They cannot understand concepts like sacrifice for others or fighting for principles rather than profit. That gives biological species advantages the Kree cannot calculate, Nari observed. Unpredictability, creativity, and willingness to accept losses for strategic gains. 3 months later, the first joint Vorthak-human military exercise took place in neutral space. Ships from both species practiced coordinated tactics that combined Vorthak firepower with human maneuverability and deception. Nari commanded the human forces while Veltar led the Vorthak fleet. Working together, they developed new approaches to space combat that surprised even their own officers. Captain Moon-Soo Ryu marveled at how quickly the former enemies learned to coordinate their efforts. 6 months ago, we were trying to destroy each other. Now we're sharing tactical secrets. Commander Soo-Young-Oh noted how Vorthak discipline combined effectively with human creativity. Their systematic approach to logistics supports our improvisational battle tactics perfectly. As news of the alliance spread, other species began requesting similar cooperation agreements. The young humans who had once been dismissed as children playing at warfare were now recognized as innovators whose methods could reshape military thinking across the galaxy. Nari stood on the observation deck of the joint training station, watching human and Vorthak ships practice maneuvers together. Veltar joined her at the viewing window. Do you think we can defeat the Kree? He asked. Nari considered the question seriously. I think we can do something more important than defeat them. We can teach the galaxy that cooperation between different species creates possibilities that none of us could achieve alone. Veltar looked down at the small human beside him with respect that had been earned through battle and proven through victory. Commander Nari Kim, when we first met, I saw only a child pretending to be a warrior. And now? Nari asked with a slight smile. Now I see someone who has changed not just the outcome of a war, but the way the entire galaxy thinks about strength, wisdom, and the price of making assumptions about others. In the distance, a new class of ship flew past the station. It bore the markings of both human and Vorthak fleets, designed with technology from both species. It represented something unprecedented in galactic history, former enemies working together to face a common threat. The young human who had been dismissed as nothing more than a child had not only won a war. She had begun to reshape the galaxy itself, one alliance at a time, proving that the greatest victories come not from conquering others, but from inspiring them to be better than they thought possible. And in the depths of space, the Kree Consortium detected these new alliance formations with sensors that could calculate firepower and ship numbers, but could never understand the true strength that comes from beings who choose to fight for each other, rather than against each other. The machines were about to learn the same lesson the Vorthak had learned. Never underestimate the power of those who think differently than you do.